bring in now for more analysis someone who has insight into how Biden works politically and personally. Chuck Hagel is former defense secretary who worked alongside Joe Biden. Mr. Hagel, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here on France 24. I'd be interested in hearing from you many things about Joe Biden, because obviously your insight is valuable to us here at France 24. We really appreciate it. Can I start by asking, what is Joe Biden like under pressure?
Well, I had the opportunity, the privilege to work with Joe Biden for over 20 years in the United States Senate, in the cabinet. I've been all over the world with him. I've seen him under pressure. I've seen him in quiet moments with leaders of nations, in tense moments. I've seen him under pressure in trying to finalize a deal on Capitol Hill, a big deal, or as vice president, trying to work an agreement with international leaders. So he's cool, he's calm, he's experienced, he's smart, and he's got the right style. He does not overreact. He's a man with great empathy, with great decency, and I think all that combined make it very important for him to be the leader of this country at this time in a very volatile and unpredictable world.
You, sir, are a Republican. Mr. Biden is a Democrat. It sounds to me, though, that he is someone you respect greatly.
I do respect Joe Biden greatly. I think almost every Republican who's ever worked with him, his 35 years in the Senate, his 8 years as vice president, may disagree with him, Republicans, but they respect him. They like him. He's a decent, honest man. He's a principled man. You can disagree. That's democracy. That's okay. But in the end, you have to compromise. You have to move ahead, and you've got to work on programs, processes, and things that will move your country forward, will help the world, make a better place, better country, better world. And he can do all those things, and I do respect him.
Can I ask you, because as we're speaking now, we're seeing images of the Capitol. January the 6th, when we saw the Capitol under attack, I don't think that's an exaggeration, by a very angry mob. How did that leave you feeling? And how big a task do you think Joe Biden has now to try to reunite the country?
Well, I think I was like every American, feeling shame, feeling sadness that had occurred in our nation's capital. We had never seen anything like this in the history of our country, except one time, and you've got to go back to the War of 1812 when the British invaded and burned part of the Capitol. And they were the enemy, a foreign enemy. What we saw on January 6th were only American citizens that were invading and occupying and destroying the capital of the United States of America. So as we are absorbing that, we're thinking about that, we recognize, and I don't think we needed the incident on January 6th to recognize that this country is terribly divided. It's politically polarized. We're paralyzed in many ways. It's going to take a long way back. We'll get back, but it's going to be a long road. It's going to be painful. It's going to not be easy for President Biden. He's going to have to work with Republicans, and Republicans work with him to turn this country around, both internationally and domestically.
How damaging have the past 4 years been for the United States under Donald Trump?
I think very damaging. Whether you isolate just on the domestic front, what he's done to our allies, taking us out of international agreements, taking us out of international institutions. He's tariffed our allies. He's sanctioned people without going through a process through WTO. He's gone before the United Nations every year, General Assembly in September, and said, our foreign policy is America first. That's our foreign policy. Well, a great nation, a leader of the nation of the world, can't say that. We're more than just America. We are part of the global world. We're global citizens, just like the French, just like the English, like the Russians, Chinese. And we're going to have to get along. There's 7 billion people of us. And so we need allies, we need friends, we need partners. We've always needed allies. The strength of America, very much the last 72 years since World War II, has resulted because of strong alliances, whether it's NATO or whatever the alliance is. We've benefited from that. So has Europe, so has the world. But that's the whole point, the common interest of all mankind trying to work together. We have our differences. We're going to have differences. Every nation must respond in its own self-interest. That's okay. That's predictable. But you've got to get along. You've got to work with people. And the United States, I think, has a role in helping lead the world.
Indeed, that role of world leader is something that has been reined in, almost extinguished over the past 4 years under Donald Trump. Ursula von der Leyen of the EU welcoming Joe Biden, saying that there is an ally for Europe in the White House now, and something she's welcomed. Do you think, Mr. Hagel, that what we might see from now on is the US start again to rebuild that role of being world leader? Do you think it will take a different form, though, this time?
Well, it is a different time in the world. There are different dynamics, different pressures, but also the same realities. I mean, let's start with COVID. COVID-19 is not a sovereign problem. It's a global pandemic. Take environmental issues, trade, economy, prosperity, opportunities, hope. That isn't limited to one nation or a group of nations. That's the whole world. And so what we've got to do is do a lot of work to get back to where I think we once led, not dictated, but we led with allies and friends. And because of what's happened in the last 4 years, it's going to take some time to get back. Biden has plans to do that. He will do that. Some of those plans will be different from past plans because the world's different. Others will be the same plan, the same approach to our friends and our allies, our trading partners, and rebuilding, strengthening alliances. And I think he's been pretty clear on that so far over the last 2 months since he's been elected president, that this is going to be a priority.
More troops today in Washington than there are in Iraq and Afghanistan. Donald Trump clearly made it clear he wanted to bring the troops back. Do you think he was right to take the troops out of Iraq, to take the troops out of Afghanistan?
Well, eventually we're going to have to do that. I mean, these two wars are the longest wars America's ever been in. The United States will not support long wars. That's just not who we are. And I don't think who we should be. Not occupying troops. We made some fundamental mistakes going into Afghanistan. We should have never gone into Iraq. It was a huge mistake. And we're paying a price for that. And so we're going to have to withdraw troops. But you can't just unilaterally, arbitrarily withdraw troops because your president says you should or you can. You've got other considerations to think of. I mean, what comes afterward? What kind of position are you leaving the government in? Is it going to be even more dangerous than before we got there 20 years ago, for example, in Afghanistan? What about our allies? What about our friends? What about the region? So you've got to think about all these things. You know, there's an old adage that I think the smart people live by, and especially our military leaders. Easy to get into war, very hard to get out of war. And unless you've got an exit strategy, unless you've got plans to get in and get out, and they're never perfect plans, never perfect, but you've got to have some general planning for that. We never had that for Afghanistan and Iraq. We just drifted and drifted and drifted. And unfortunately, Afghanistan is now worse off probably than it's ever been. And so that's going to be a tough call for Biden as to how he engages America's withdrawal.
Chuck Hagel, former Defence Secretary. Can I just pause you there, sir? Thank you very much for joining us. I understand you're staying with us, and we're grateful for that. That's Chuck Hagel, former Defence Secretary of the United States, who is staying with us. Let's go